The solution to your problem is not going to be found in the problem. It's not going to be found in there. You have to get out of the problem so that you can look at it, make an assessment, and you can assess how to solve the problem or whether you need to solve the problem or not. I mean, there's a lot of things in my life right now where I shrug my shoulders and go, okay. It's okay. Oh, someone's saying this. Okay. Roger that. Like, carry on. No factor. Move on. And then occasionally you go, okay, this is something I need to contend with. This is something I need to deal with. This is something I need to shape or adjust or move or solve, to use your word. And the reason I laugh when I say that is because problems, you have to get in there. But if you take a step back, you can usually say, oh, little adjustment here, a little adjustment there, and that thing's going to sort itself out. So detachment is a superpower, man. Yeah, this is one of those situations where you and I had a discussion about the science and the practical application aligned. So my original experience with detachment was, and this is one of those moments where, I said a lot of times things are just small moments over time and you make a little adjustment. This is one of those moments in my life, and I wrote about leadership strategy and tactics, where I recognized, like in a moment, what detachment was and how helpful it was. I'm on an oil rig doing a training mission. My whole platoon is in a skirmish line looking at a large area of the oil rig that we're supposed to be clearing. Again, this is not combat. This is in the 90s. There's nothing going on. We're just doing training. And I'm standing in this skirmish line. And by the way, I'm the youngest and most junior guy in my platoon. And I'm standing there looking down the sight of my weapon, and I'm waiting for someone to make a call and tell us what to do. And I wait for 5 seconds, and I wait for 10 seconds, and I wait for 20 seconds, and no one's saying anything. And we're waiting for
which clearly demarcates the end of work and the start of the night after work. And the shutdown ritual, so it has to, you have to close open loops, right? So you got to make sure this is like a review type period. Let me look back at my inbox and look at my plan. Let me look at my, my time block and my calendar. Really make sure there's nothing urgent that needs to be dealt with that I didn't. And there's nothing that's just in my head that I don't want to forget. That's not written down somewhere. Like, take care of all of that, right? So you review all these things. You get, what am I going to do tomorrow? You don't have to build your whole plan for tomorrow, but you have a sense for it. And then you need some sort of demonstrative thing you do to indicate that you finished a routine, right? So my longtime newsletter readers know I used to actually have a phrase. I would say, schedule, shutdown, complete. Like a crazy phrase, right? It's not how normal people talk, right? Now I have a planner that has like a checkbox that says shutdown complete next to it. The reason why that is a demonstrative anchor is that you use this then for cognitive behavioral therapy, because at first people have a hard time shutting down work. I mean, I invented this because I had a very hard time shutting down working on my dissertation. What if this proof doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah. So what you do is when you get a rumination post shutdown, hey, what about what's going on with our work? Are we doing the right thing? Do we forget this or that? Instead of engaging in the rumination, well, it's like, no, I think we're okay. Let me think about my schedule tomorrow. What's my plan? You instead can just say, I said that crazy phrase, or I checked that box. I wouldn't have said that phrase unless I had gone through everything and made sure that I had a good plan and nothing's being missed and it was okay to shut down work. Because of that, I'm not going to engage with your rumination. I said the weird thing. Let's get back to what we're doing. This is like cognitive behavioral therapy that after a month or so, you are really able to actually effortlessly disengage from work and do everything, all the other stuff that matters.
The nobler the aim, that's one way of thinking about it, the better your life. And that's a really interesting thing to know because, you've heard ever since you were tiny that you should act like a good person and you shouldn't lie, for example. And you might think, well, why the hell should I act like a good person and why not lie? I mean, even a 3-year-old can ask that question because smart kids learn to lie earlier, by the way. And they think, well, why not twist the fabric of reality so that it serves your specific short-term needs? I mean, that's a great question. Why not do that? Why act morally? If you can get away with something and it brings you closer to something you want, well, why not do it? These are good questions. It's not self-evident. Well, it seems to me tied in with what I just mentioned. It's like you destabilize yourself and things become chaotic. That's not good. And if you don't have a noble aim, then you have nothing but shallow, trivial pleasures, and they don't sustain you. And that's not good because life is so difficult, it's so much suffering, it's so complex. It ends and everyone dies and it's painful. It's like without a noble aim, how can you withstand any of that? You can't. You become desperate, and once you become desperate, things go from bad to worse very rapidly when you become desperate. And so there's the idea of the noble aim. And it's not something, it's something that's necessary. It's the bread that people cannot live without, right? That's not physical bread. It's the noble aim. And what is that? Well, it was encapsulated in part in the story of Marduk. It's to pay attention. It's to speak properly. It's to confront chaos. It's to make a better world. It's something like that. And that's enough of a noble aim so that you can stand up without, cringing at the very thought of your own existence, so that you can do something that's worthwhile to justify your wretched position on the planet. So now the literary issue is that, look, you take a text, you can interpret it a variety of ways, but that's not right. This is where the postmodernists went wrong, because what you're looking for in a text, and in the world for that matter, is sufficient order and direction. So then we have to think, well, what does sufficient order and direction means? Well, you don't want to suffer so much that your life is unbearable, right? That just seems self-evident. Pain argues for itself. I think of pain as the fundamental reality because no one disputes it, right? I mean, even if you say that you don't believe in pain, it doesn't help when you're in pain. You still believe in it, right? You can't pry it up with logic and rationality. It just stands forth as what the fundament of existence, and that's actually quite useful to know. Say, well, you don't want any more of that than is absolutely necessary. And I think that's self-evident. And then you say, well, wait a minute, it's more complicated than that. You don't want any more of that that's necessary today, but also not tomorrow and not next week and not next month and not next year. So however you act now, better not compromise how you're going to be in a year, because that would just be counterproductive. That's part of the problem with short-term pleasures, right? It's like act in haste, repent at leisure. Everyone knows exactly what that means. So you have to act in a way that works now and tomorrow and next week and next month and so forth. And so you have to take your future self into account. And human beings can do that. And taking your future self into account isn't much different than taking other people into account, right? Because I remember there's this Simpson episode. And so figuring out how to conduct yourself properly in relationship to your future self isn't much different than figuring out how to conduct yourself in relationship to other people. But then we could expand the constraints. Not only does the interpretation that you extract have to protect you from suffering and give you an aim, but it has to do it in a way that's iterable,